The false dawn had barely stretched its first tentative fingers across the vast Kenyan savanna, painting the eastern sky in bruised purples and smoldering oranges, when the scream tore through the pre-morning stillness. It wasn't the guttural roar of a lion, nor the cackle of hyenas, nor even the panicked trumpet of an elephant. This was different, sharper, a shriek of raw, unadulterated terror, unnaturally high-pitched and cutting deep into the quiet. Jahari Kito, a man whose face carried the deep-set lines of 42 years spent under the unforgiving sun, felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cool morning air. A veteran ranger, his instinct was a finely honed instrument. He grabbed his binoculars, the familiar weight a small comfort, and scanned the distant acacia trees. Nothing. But the cry had come from this direction, near the dry riverbed that snaked through his patrol sector. He tightened the laces of his worn boots, adjusted the brim of his hat, and headed toward the sound, his movements fluid and silent as a shadow. The air grew heavy with a metallic tang as he drew closer, a scent he knew too well: blood. His breath hitched in his throat. Rounding a thicket of thorn bushes, the scene unfolded before him, stark and horrifying under the nascent light. A giant, magnificent female giraffe lay sprawled, her long neck twisted at an impossible angle, a grotesque monument of death on the red earth. Beside her, trembling violently, a baby giraffe no older than a few weeks, Neota, nudged her mother's lifeless flank, letting out small, desperate whimpers. Jahari's seasoned eye immediately swept the area. No drag marks, no telltale signs of a struggle against a large predator. A lion kill would have been chaotic, the ground torn up, flesh ripped, perhaps parts missing. This wasn't that. This was clinical, too neat, too contained. The air around the carcass held an odd stillness, an absence of the usual scavenger buzz. A profound unease began to settle in his gut, a cold, creeping sensation that tightened his chest. He moved cautiously, his hand instinctively resting on the machete at his hip. Crouching low, his deep-set brown eyes, usually watchful and steady, now narrowed with confusion and burgeoning alarm. He knelt beside the colossal body, his gaze tracing the length of the mother's neck and flank. What he saw made his blood run cold. Not the ragged tiers of teeth or claws, but small, precise puncture wounds. They were clean, almost surgical, clustered in places where vital organs lay beneath the hide. Too small for a large caliber rifle, too uniform for a spear. They looked less like an attack and more like an extraction. Then his gaze dropped to the trampled earth directly beneath the mother's head. Amidst the disturbed dust and flattened grass, there it was, a faint, almost imperceptible shimmer. He leaned closer, his fingers hesitantly reaching out. A fine, almost translucent powder, luminescent in the faint glow of dawn, clung to the soil. It wasn't natural. He'd never seen anything like it in all his years. It had an ethereal quality, catching the light in a way that defied explanation, a residue alien to the very soil of the savanna. He looked up, his eyes locking with Neota's. The baby giraffe, her golden coat still damp with dew, had stopped whimpering. Her large, dark eyes, brimming with a grief too profound for her young life, fixed on his. But it wasn't just fear or sorrow in their depths. There was an intelligence there, a desperate, silent plea that resonated with a knowing beyond her years. It was as if she understood, as if she was trying to communicate the horror of what had transpired, an event far stranger and more terrifying than the natural cycle of life and death. The silent connection intensified Johari's growing suspicion, twisting the unease into a gnawing certainty. This was no ordinary tragedy. This was something else entirely. Something deliberately concealed. Something sinister that had left its mark not only on the land, but on the very soul of the innocent creature before him. The morning sun, now higher, began to bake the savanna, but a different kind of heat coursed through Jahari Kito. His mind raced, replaying the eerie luminescence, the precise wounds, and Neota's unnervingly intelligent gaze. Every instinct screamed that this was not a natural occurrence. This was deliberate, manipulated. His official duty commanded him to report the carcass, to call for a team to document and remove the remains. But the thought of those strange markings and the unusual residue being swept away possibly dismissed as anomalies, was a chilling prospect. He couldn't allow it. He reached for his radio, his hand hovering over the send button. He knew the protocol by heart, but today, protocol felt like an accomplice to silence. Quito to HQ, he said, his voice even, betraying none of the turmoil within him. Reporting a giraffe fatality, Sector 7. Looks like natural causes, perhaps a lone hyena, though no clear signs of predation. Female with an uninjured calf. Will monitor the calf until it can be integrated into a herd. It was a lie of omission, carefully crafted to buy him time. He deliberately avoided mention of the strange puncture marks or the faint, otherworldly glow on the earth. He couldn't risk the evidence being contaminated, or worse, deliberately disappeared. Neota, sensing his shift in attention, let out another soft whimper, nudging her mother's flank. The thought of leaving this vulnerable calf alone to the harsh elements, to the scavengers, was unthinkable. It wasn't just compassion. It was a deeper understanding, an innate connection he felt with the wild. Nyota's eyes, still fixed on him, held a silent plea he couldn't ignore. She wasn't just a victim. She was a witness. Jahari retrieved his Land Rover, parking it a respectful distance from the fallen giraffe. He approached Nyota slowly, speaking in a low, soothing voice, the kind he used with traumatized animals. "It's all right, little one," he murmured, his voice a gentle hum against the vast silence. "Come with me. We'll find you a new home." He walked a short distance, then paused, coaxing her with gentle movements and soft calls. Slowly, hesitantly, Nyota took a step, then another, her long, spindly legs tentative. Jahari kept the pace agonizingly slow, waiting each time for her to catch up, reassuring her with his presence. It took time, but his patience and deep understanding of animal behavior paid off. Nyota began to follow, trotting unsteadily behind the Land Rover as he drove, barely faster than a walk. As they moved, Jahari kept his eyes peeled, scanning the ground around the deceased mother one last time. He knew he was taking a grave risk, defying procedure, but his conviction was too strong to ignore. Then a glint, not the natural shimmer of quartz or mica, but something sharper, more defined. He stopped the Land Rover abruptly, Nyota letting out a surprised squeak but remaining close. He rushed back, his gaze drawn to the spot where he'd last seen the mother's head. There, just beneath the surface of the trampled earth, near one of the unnatural puncture wounds, a tiny fragment of something caught the sunlight. He knelt, pulling out his multi-tool, and carefully used the fine tweezers to extract it. It was small, no larger than a grain of rice, but undeniably metallic, dark gray, almost black, and perfectly smooth, with edges that looked as if they had been precisely cut. It was utterly out of place, a stark contrast to the organic environment, screaming man-made in a language only Jahari could hear. Holding the minuscule shard between his fingers, Jahari felt a cold dread solidify in his gut. This wasn't just a poaching. This wasn't an isolated incident. The luminescent residue, the surgical precision of the wounds, and now this alien fragment. It all pointed to something far more organized, far more sinister. He was no longer just a ranger investigating a dead animal. He was stumbling into a conspiracy, a dark secret hidden beneath the guise of the wild. The personal risk he was now undertaking, protecting Nyota in this evidence, felt suddenly immense, suffocating. He knew with absolute certainty that he had just crossed a line, one from which there was no turning back. The dusty track leading to Jahari's ranger station felt less like a route home and more like an escape tunnel. He guided Nyota, her spindly legs now steadier, to a secluded, forgotten corner behind the main barracks. A small, dilapidated shed overgrown with thorn bushes, rarely used. This would be their sanctuary. Working under the cloak of twilight, Jahari reinforced the rickety wooden walls, fortifying the flimsy lock, and rigging a series of makeshift alarms. Tin cans on wires, strategically placed trip lines, anything to give him an early warning. The paranoia, once a whisper, was now a persistent drumbeat in his ears. He was playing a dangerous game, one that demanded absolute secrecy. As night deepened, illuminated by the bare bulb in his Spartan quarters, Jahari began his covert research. The metallic shard, painstakingly wrapped in a clean cloth, and a small, sealed vial containing the luminescent residue, lay on his worn wooden table. He photographed the mother giraffe's precise wounds, noting every detail, every anomaly. Then he composed a carefully worded message to Dr. Imani Adhiambo, his most trusted contact at the National Wildlife Forensics Lab. He framed it as an unusual poaching case, emphasizing the bizarre nature of the wounds and a strange glowing substance found near the carcass, hoping to pique her scientific curiosity without revealing the full extent of his suspicions or his clandestine actions. He knew Imani's integrity was unshakable. If anyone could help him without judgment, it was her. In the days that followed, an extraordinary bond formed between Johari and Nyota. The young giraffe, though still grieving, adapted with uncanny speed. She learned Johari's routine, nuzzled his hand for comfort, and even seemed to understand his hushed conversations. But it was her intuitive guardian instincts that truly defied explanation. As Johari sat huddled over his maps or making hushed calls, Nyota would stand close, her long neck craned, her large ears swiveling. Her soft, inquisitive calls would change pitch, becoming a low, guttural rumble, a subtle shift that Johari soon learned to interpret. A distant vehicle approaching, even miles away, would trigger her unique warning. A faint movement on the perimeter, too subtle for human eyes, would cause her to emit a sharp, insistent snort. She wasn't just a traumatized orphan. She was a sentinel, an extension of his own heightened senses, a silent accomplice in his escalating quest for truth. The wait for Imani's findings stretched Johari's nerves thin. Each crackle of his radio, each shadow flickering across the shed, sent a jolt of adrenaline through him. He questioned his choices, the risks he was taking, the life he was putting on the line. But then he would look at Nyota, her intelligent eyes mirroring his own sleepless nights, and the resolve would harden again. He couldn't turn back. Then the call came. Imani's voice, usually calm and methodical, was laced with an almost frantic urgency. "Johari," she gasped, the connection sputtering with static. "You didn't tell me the half of it. The shard, the residue. It's not like anything I've ever seen. The metallic composition, it's a composite, but the biomarkers, they're artificially engineered, highly advanced. We're talking about something beyond conventional material science, infused with organic compounds designed for specific biological interactions. And the residue, it's a synthetic luminescent compound, active at a cellular level, almost like it's leaving a trace where something was extracted." Johari felt a cold hand grip his heart. "What are you saying, Imani?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Nyota, standing beside him, shifted, her ears twitching towards the crackling radio. "I'm saying," Imani continued, her voice dropping to a grave tone, "this isn't poaching, Johari. This is something profoundly dangerous. Whatever killed that giraffe was technologically sophisticated, almost futuristic. And whoever's behind it, they have immense resources. You've stumbled onto something, Johari, something big and dark. Be careful, more than careful. Get out of there, you are in serious danger." The line went dead, leaving Johari in the echoing silence of his shed, the weight of Imani's words settling upon him like a suffocating blanket. He looked at Nyota, her eyes wide, sensing his fear, and knew Imani was right. He had stumbled into a web far more intricate and perilous than he could have ever imagined. The chill of Imani's warning had barely receded when Johari felt the subtle shift in the air. His covert actions, his defiance of protocol, had created ripples. Routine patrols, once predictable, started appearing in his sector with an unnerving frequency, their eyes lingering on his shed, their questions too casual. Then Imani called again, her voice tight with suppressed fear. Her lab had been discreetly searched, she whispered. Her computer wiped, and her research on his samples vanished. Someone was watching. Someone was erasing their tracks. Johari's mind latched onto a name he had only heard whispered in hushed tones amongst old guard rangers. The Consortium. A shadowy, powerful entity rumored to operate above the law, with tentacles reaching deep into various government and corporate structures. His blood ran cold. He had to be sure. Under the cover of a false engine repair, he spent an hour meticulously inspecting his Land Rover. Every inch of the undercarriage, every hidden crevice. As the last rays of the setting sun painted the savannah in fiery hues, his fingers brushed against something cold, metallic, and undeniably alien. Tucked away, expertly hidden behind a brake line, was a small, sleek device, no bigger than his thumb, its surface a dull, non-reflective black. He recognized its unmistakable design, a highly sophisticated, military-grade GPS tracker. He was being hunted. The confirmation was a punch to the gut, stealing his breath. The ranger station, once his sanctuary, now felt like a cage. He had to move, and quickly. But where? The wilderness was vast, but also unforgiving. The thought of taking Neota, still so young, into that brutal unknown was an agonizing decision. He looked at her, standing watch near the shed entrance, her ears swiveling, sensing his turmoil. Her presence was a constant reminder of the stakes. He had promised to protect her, and now that promise meant risking everything. He spent the rest of the night preparing. He packed essentials: water, dried food, a medical kit, his rifle, extra ammunition. He disabled the tracker, carefully placing it in a pouch to avoid alerting whoever was monitoring it. He would drive for a while, then abandon the vehicle, continuing on foot. It was a desperate plan, born of necessity. As the first tendrils of pre-dawn light began to illuminate the horizon, Jahari led Neota out of the shed. "We're going on an adventure, little one," he murmured, his voice laced with a grim determination he hoped she couldn't detect. He climbed into the Land Rover, leaving the doors open for her. To his astonishment, Neota didn't hesitate. She looked at him, her intelligent dark eyes filled with a profound, almost strategic understanding, then gracefully stepped into the back of the open vehicle, settling down amongst his gear as if she'd done it 100 times. They moved slowly, Jahari driving off-road, avoiding known tracks. But it was Neota who truly guided them. Her senses were extraordinary. Her long neck would suddenly extend, her ears twitching, before she would let out a soft, insistent whimper, nudging him with her head. Jahari quickly learned to trust these subtle cues. She would stare intently into a particular patch of dense bush or towards a distant ridge, her gaze unwavering. He would adjust their course, following her silent direction. Later, he would pass by those same areas on foot, concealed, and find discreetly placed trail cameras, or hear the distant rumble of other vehicles, patrol cars that seemed to be actively searching for him. Neota's intuition was uncanny. She led him through forgotten game trails, down dry riverbeds, through thickets that would have been impenetrable had she not somehow known the way. Her eyes, constantly darting, seemed to pick out every hidden detail, every potential threat. It was a profound, silent language of trust and shared survival. She wasn't just following, she was actively navigating, her small body, now slightly taller and stronger, imbued with a powerful sense of purpose and a gratitude that defied explanation. She was leading them away from the hunters, deeper into the vast protective embrace of the wilderness. A wilderness that was now their only refuge. Jahari understood. They were two fugitives, hunted by a powerful, unseen enemy, relying solely on each other in a desperate bid for freedom and truth. If you've been holding your breath with Jahari and Neota, you're about to have it taken away completely. The layers of this conspiracy are about to peel back, revealing a truth more horrifying than anything we've imagined. Make sure you hit that like button, share this with anyone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to not miss a single beat, because what they uncover next, well, let's just say it changes everything. The stakes are higher than ever, and danger is now staring them directly in the face. The decision gnawed at Jahari, a raw wound in his soul. The Forbidden Zone. For years, it had been a whispered legend among the rangers, a vast, rugged expanse of the reserve mysteriously sealed off, guarded by automated systems and armed patrols, its purpose shrouded in official secrecy. To enter it was to invite certain death or imprisonment. Yet Neota, with an instinct that defied reason, had been subtly guiding him towards its perimeter for days, her long neck always pointing to the ancient, overgrown fences, her soft nudges insisting on that perilous path. His logical mind screamed against it, but his gut, now utterly reliant on the giraffe's uncanny wisdom, urged him forward. He had to know. He risked everything, driven by a desperate need for answers. Navigating the treacherous terrain leading into the Forbidden Zone was a nightmare of dense bush and hidden ravines. But Neota, no longer just a follower, became his unerring guide. Her intelligence, always evident, now manifested with startling clarity. She moved with an almost preternatural awareness, her every step deliberate. She'd stop suddenly, her dark, intelligent eyes fixed on a barely visible tripwire or a patch of disturbed earth where a motion sensor lay buried. Jahari, following her cues, would dismount, disabling the devices, his heart pounding against his ribs. It was as if she understood the invisible threats, sensing the technology designed to capture or kill. Their most harrowing encounter came with a hidden snare, a massive, brutal loop designed for large game. Jahari almost missed it, obscured by low-hanging branches. But Nyota saw it. She stopped dead, her entire body tensing. Instead of simply avoiding it, she carefully extended one of her powerful forelegs, her hooves incredibly nimble, and with a series of deliberate, almost surgical movements, nudged and pressed the snare mechanism until it sprang harmlessly into the air. She then nudged the disarm trap away with her snout, before looking back at Jahari with a deep, knowing gaze. It was a display of unprecedented gratitude, a silent declaration that she was no longer just a ward, but an active participant, a strategic ally in their desperate flight. The air grew heavy with a metallic tang as they penetrated deeper. Finally, after hours of painstaking silent movement through the moonless night, Nyota halted, her body tensing. She nudged Jahari forward, indicating a rocky outcrop above them. He scrambled up, pulling out his binoculars. What he saw made his blood run cold, chilling him to the bone in a way no predator ever could. Nestled in a hidden valley, dimly lit by harsh, cold industrial lights, stood a sprawling, heavily fortified compound. This was no ordinary research outpost. Through his binoculars, Jahari could make out massive reinforced cages, far larger than any standard animal enclosure. And within them were a horrifying sight. Not just lions, but creatures of nightmare, abnormally large, unnervingly muscular, and radiating an unsettling aura of aggression, even in their sleep. Their eyes, even from this distance, seemed to glow with an unnatural intensity. These were the true predators, he realized with a sickening lurch, the engineered monstrosities responsible for his mother's death. Their precise, almost surgical kills now made a terrifying sense. Then his gaze drifted to the heart of the facility, a series of enormous, transparent vats, filled with a viscous, glowing liquid, pulsed with an eerie green light. The light, the luminescence, was shockingly familiar. It was the same unnatural glow he'd seen on the earth around Nyota's mother. This wasn't just research, it was manipulation, genetic alteration on a scale that defied ethics and sanity. They weren't just studying wildlife, they were creating it, forging weapons out of nature. Jahari felt a wave of nausea. He pressed a hand to his mouth, the metallic taste of fear bitter on his tongue. Nyota, towering beside him, nudged his shoulder gently, her intelligent eyes reflecting the strange distant light, her stance protective and knowing. She had led him to the belly of the beast. The conspiracy was real, and it was far more monstrous than he could have ever conceived. The horrifying tableau of the research facility, with its monstrous lions and glowing vats, seared itself into Jahari's mind. He had to get evidence, something undeniable. While Nyota kept vigilant watch, he had stealthily navigated closer, bypassing multiple layers of security. He located a server room, managed to extract a glowing data drive, a pulsating beacon of stolen truth, before retreating to their vantage point. Just as the full weight of the consortium's bioweaponry research, a terrifying fusion of genetic engineering and predatory enhancement, slammed into his consciousness, the night erupted. Headlights sliced through the darkness, followed by the crunch of heavy boots on gravel. The consortium's enforcement unit had arrived, a phalanx of figures in dark tactical gear, fanning out with chilling efficiency. They knew he was here. A guttural roar ripped through the night, not from a lion, but from one of the engineered beasts within the compound, sensing the intrusion. It was a terrifying call to arms. Jahari gripped the data drive, its warmth a stark contrast to the cold fear coiling in his gut. There was no escape. They were surrounded. He was cornered, an old ranger with a rifle against an army. "This is it, Nyota," he whispered, pressing his hand to her warm flank. "They're here." What happened next defied all logic, all biological understanding. Neota, now fully grown, her magnificent golden coat rippling in the artificial light, took a step forward. Her eyes filled with an unprecedented gratitude and an almost human-like strategic intelligence locked onto Johari's. She let out a series of soft, urgent rumbles. Then, with an organized behavior Johari had never witnessed in any wild animal, she charged. But she didn't charge the armed men. Instead, she veered sharply towards a dimly lit, poorly supported structure at the edge of the compound, a tall, rickety scaffold laden with equipment, a weak point in the otherwise fortified perimeter. With a powerful, calculated thrust of her long neck and massive body, she slammed into its base. Wood splintered, metal shrieked, and with a deafening crash, the entire structure collapsed, kicking up a colossal cloud of dust and debris, plunging that section of the compound into darkness. Alarms shrieked, men shouted, and the engineered lions within their cages roared in a cacophony of chaos. It was a diversion, brilliantly executed, and it bought Johari precious seconds. Go! He screamed to Neota, but she was already turning, melting back into the shadows of the deeper bush as the enforcement unit scrambled, their flashlights frantically cutting through the dust and confusion. Johari didn't hesitate. Clutching the glowing data drive, his torn uniform flapping, he sprinted, fueled by adrenaline and a burning sense of purpose. He fled into the pre-dawn darkness, the sounds of distant gunshots and the roar of the genetically modified predators fading behind him. He was a rogue ranger now, a fugitive, but he carried the truth. The full, horrifying scale of the consortium's bioweaponry research, their monstrous experiments, their exploitation of nature's secrets for unimaginable power was finally laid bare. He would not stop. He would leak the evidence to the world. He ran until the sky began to bleed with the first pale light of morning, until the sounds of the compound were a distant memory. He looked back one last time, scanning the horizon. There, on a distant ridge, silhouetted against the nascent sunrise, was Neota. She was among a small herd of wild giraffes, truly free, blending with her kind. But before disappearing completely into the vastness of the savannah, she turned, her intelligent eyes finding his, conveying a silent promise. A promise of future defiance against a world intent on exploiting nature's secrets. A promise that the fight for truth had only just begun.